To millions of Americans, he was the picture of wide-eyed innocence. With a cheerful gal and a goofy, lovable grin, Gomer Pyle stumbled his way from a Mayberry gas station right into the heart of the nation. He was the most harmless, unsophisticated, and dependable guy on television, a symbol of a simpler, more wholesome time. But behind that beloved character was a man living in quiet fear, burdened by a secret that, in the unforgiving world of old Hollywood, could have destroyed everything he'd ever built. For decades, Jim Nabors had to navigate a treacherous landscape where a single rumor could kill a career. His private life was a fortress, built to protect himself from a world that wasn't ready for him. This is the story of the man behind Gomer Pyle, a story of hidden love, a devastating public lie, and the quiet dignity of a life lived completely on his own terms. It's a story about a vicious rumor involving one of Hollywood's biggest heartthrobs, and the true, 38-year romance that was happening all along, far from the prying eyes of the spotlight. To millions, he was Gomer Pyle, the most innocent, lovable goofball on television. But in the early 1970s, a vicious rumor exploded across Hollywood that Jim Nabors had secretly married Hollywood's biggest heartthrob, Rock Hudson. That rumor was a lie, but it was designed to destroy him. What the world didn't know was that the truth was far more powerful. Jim Nabors was in a secret, decades-long romance, but it wasn't with Rock Hudson. This is the story of the real man Jim Nabors loved, and the extraordinary lengths they both went to protect a truth that was more profound than any Hollywood gossip. In the world of 1960s television, few characters were as instantly recognizable as Gomer Pyle. With his high-pitched cries of Shazam and gal. He was the ultimate country boy, a pure-hearted soul in a world that was often too cynical for him. James Thurston Nabors, born in Sylacauga, Alabama, on June 12, 1930, seemed like an unlikely candidate for TV stardom. Growing up, he was a quiet boy with severe asthma that kept him out of sports. Instead, he found his voice in the glee club and choir, a small hint of the powerful instrument hiding underneath his gentle perso. After getting a business degree from the University of Alabama, he worked as a typist for the UN in New York and later as a film cutter. But it was in LA, while performing at a cabaret club called The Horn, that his life changed forever. His act was different. He'd tell folksy, hillbilly stories in a high-pitched voice, and then, to the absolute shock of the audience, unleash a magnificent, booming baritone singing voice. This strange and captivating performance caught the eye of one of the biggest stars in television, Andy Griffith. Griffith saw something special in Nabors and offered him a one-off role on The Andy Griffith Show as a naive but sweet gas station attendant named Gomer Pyle. Nabors later recalled it was the first time he had ever acted. He was an instant hit. Audiences fell in love with Gomer's innocence and his firm belief in the good in people. He was only supposed to be in one episode, but the public wanted more, and Gomer became a Mayberry fixture. The character was so popular that in 1964, he got his own spin-off, Gomer Pyle, U.S.M.C. The show, following Gomer's misadventures in the Marine Corps, became a ratings machine, staying in the top 10 for most of its run. For 5 seasons, America watched Gomer's unshakable optimism drive his hot-tempered drill sergeant, Frank Sutton, completely nuts. At the same time, Nabors launched a massive singing career. Columbia Records signed him, and he recorded over 24 albums, with several going gold and platinum. The contrast was what made him so compelling. The goofy, high-pitched Gomer Pyle had the rich, commanding voice of an opera singer. This only added to his mystique. He became a beloved guest on variety shows, especially The Carol Burnett Show, where his close friend Carol Burnett considered him a good-luck charm and had him on every season premiere. He was, by all measures, one of the biggest stars in America. But this persona of the simple, almost childlike innocent became a gilded cage. He was loved for being Gomer, but it was a mask he could never really take off. He once said that playing Gomer forced him to be up all the time, even when he didn't feel like it. The Gomer Pyle image was so ingrained in the American mind that it left little room for the real Jim Nabors, a man who was far more complex, intelligent, and carrying a secret he knew could bring it all crashing down. While Jim Nabors was charming millions as Gomer Pyle, the Hollywood he lived in was a place of deep paranoia, especially for anyone who didn't fit the studio-approved mold. The 1950s and 60s were ruled by morality clauses in actors' contracts, which gave studios the power to fire them for any behavior that could cause public ridicule. In reality, this was a weapon used to control their stars' private lives, and nothing was more feared than homosexuality. The cultural climate was brutal. This was the era of the Lavender Scare, a moral panic that ran alongside the anti-communist Red Scare, where suspected gay and lesbian people were purged from their jobs. Hollywood was no exception. Tabloid magazines were a constant threat, ready to expose any hint of a deviant lifestyle. For a gay actor, being outed meant more than just shame, it meant your career was over. This culture of fear pushed a whole generation of stars into hiding. Actors like Rock Hudson were sold to the public as perfect masculine heartthrobs, their careers managed with fake dates and even sham marriages to protect the illusion. Behind the scenes, life was a constant state of alert, where any friendship or gathering could lead to exposure. A career could be destroyed by a single photo or a vicious rumor. Jim Nabors understood this danger completely. His conservative upbringing in Alabama had already given him a deep need for privacy. He later said he'd known he was different from a young age, but the oppressive atmosphere of the times taught him to keep his personal life intensely private. His fame from Gomer Pyle only amplified the danger. His character was the embodiment of American innocence. If the truth about his private life got out, the backlash would have been catastrophic, not just for him, but for the wholesome image of his shows. The pressure was immense. He wasn't an activist, he just wanted to live his life and have a career. But in the Hollywood of that era, for a man like Jim Nabors, that was a radical act in itself. He built walls around his private life. In public, he was friendly and gracious, but very few people were ever allowed into his inner circle. When asked about marriage in interviews, he'd deflect, saying he was too busy with his career. This wasn't just being discreet, it was a survival strategy. Every day was a performance, not just on set, but in every public interaction. He had to be the lovable Gomer, the man with no secrets, because the alternative was unthinkable. And in the early 70s, that quiet fear became a public nightmare. By the early 1970s, Jim Nabors was a household name, and Rock Hudson was the king of Hollywood heartthrobs. Hudson had spent years building an image as the perfect leading man, tall, dark, handsome, and masculine. Like Nabors, Hudson was also a closeted gay man, his life a careful performance to protect his career. The two men were friends, moving in the same circles of a very hidden Hollywood. Then, a bizarre and malicious story started to spread. The two men hadn't just been in a secret relationship, they had actually gotten married. The story was, of course, absurd. Same-sex marriage was illegal everywhere at the time. Yet, the rumor spread like wildfire. The source of this destructive legend was, of all things, a joke. According to Hudson himself, the story started within the gay community in Huntington Beach, California. A group of men there sent out campy, joke invitations to their annual party. One year, they sent out formal-looking invitations announcing the wedding reception of Rock Hudson and Jim Nabors. To make the joke even more specific, they added a detail that played on Nabors' famous character. Hudson would supposedly take Gomer's last name and be known as Rock Pyle. It was an inside joke, but it fell into the hands of people who didn't get it. The story was taken seriously, and soon, fan magazines and even Mad Magazine were alluding to the wedding, publicizing it even further. For Nabors, the experience was devastating. He was a deeply private man, and to have his sexuality, the one thing he guarded so fiercely, dragged out into the open in such a false and grotesque way was horrifying. He called the rumor horrible, a nightmare, and a vicious, unfounded, and unwarranted story. He had no choice but to publicly deny it, a painful performance to save his career. The impact was immediate and profound. The rumor made it impossible for Nabors and Hudson to even be seen together as friends. Any public association would now be seen as proof. They stopped speaking and never spoke again. The lie didn't just hurt them, it destroyed their friendship and left them more isolated than ever. The incident was a breaking point for Nabors. He was already tired of the Hollywood grind, but this sealed his desire to escape. He looked for a sanctuary, a place where he could live in peace, far away from the whispers and the lies. He found that sanctuary in Hawaii, and it was there that his true love story was already quietly unfolding. While Hollywood was obsessed with a fake story about Rock Hudson, Jim Nabors' real love story was happening thousands of miles away in Honolulu, Hawaii. In 1975, Nabors met a man named Stan Cadwallader. Cadwallader wasn't a celebrity, he was a Honolulu firefighter, a grounded, steady man living a life completely separate from the paranoia of Hollywood. Their meeting was simple. Nabors had been vacationing in Hawaii for years and finally moved there in 1976 to escape the burnout of his career. He and Cadwallader started as friends, but their connection was immediate. Cadwallader eventually started working for Nabors as a business associate, and their friendship grew into a quiet, romantic partnership. Stan saw the real Jim, the man behind the Gomer mask, and offered him something he rarely experienced: safety. Their life together was deliberately private. Nabors bought a 500-acre macadamia nut farm in Maui and poured his energy into it, finding joy in a simpler lifestyle. He and Stan ran the farm, a world away from TV studios and red carpets. For 38 years, they built a life together in this sanctuary. Their relationship was an open secret among their close friends in Hawaii. In fact, as early as 1978, Nabors brought Cadwallader with him to his annual performance at the Indianapolis 500, a clear sign to their inner circle. But to the world, Nabors was still a bachelor. He had learned his lesson from the Hudson ordeal and wasn't willing to risk the peaceful life he had built with Stan. Their partnership was one of quiet devotion. Friends said they were perfect for each other: Jim, warm and talkative, and Stan, calm and steady. Stan was more than a partner, he was Jim's protector. While Nabors continued to perform occasionally, Stan was the grounding force in his life. He provided the stability that allowed Jim to finally be himself, at least within the safe world they had created. This decades-long relationship was the opposite of the sensationalized rumor that once dominated headlines. The Hudson story was a fiction born from a joke. The story with Stan Cadwallader was the truth, a slow, steady, and enduring love that lasted nearly 4 decades before the world ever heard his name. As Nabors once said, "It's nice to find your best friend that you can hang with all these years." He had found his as the years went by. The world that had once seemed so threatening to Jim Nabors slowly began to change. In December 2012, Washington state legalized same-sex marriage, a landmark decision that opened a door Nabors probably never thought he'd walk through. He and Stan Cadwallader had already been together for 38 years. They had weathered Hollywood storms, built a life in Hawaii, and supported each other through health scares, including Nabors' liver transplant in 1994. Nabors later explained that the decision to marry was also a practical one, recalling a time he was in the emergency room and the hospital wouldn't allow Stan to be with him because he wasn't legally family. It was, as he put it, ridiculous. He felt it was time to make it official. On January 15, 2013, Jim Nabors and Stan Cadwallader flew from Hawaii to Seattle. There, in a simple, private ceremony in their hotel room with a few close friends, a judge married them. It was a quiet, dignified moment. Just like their entire relationship. Nabors confirmed the news to a local Hawaiian station after the fact. His public coming out wasn't a spectacle, but a simple statement of truth. "I'm 82 and he's in his 60s, and so we've been together for 38 years and I'm not ashamed of people knowing. It's just that it was such a personal thing, I didn't tell anybody," he explained. He made it clear he wasn't trying to be an activist. He just wanted his marriage to be acknowledged. The public reaction was overwhelmingly positive. The secret he had carried for so long was no longer a burden, but a celebrated fact. "I'm very happy that I've had a partner of 38 years and I feel very blessed," he said. "And, what can I tell you, I'm just very happy." Jim Nabors passed away at his home in Honolulu on November 30, 2017, at the age of 87, with his husband Stan by his side. He had lived to see the world change, and he left it as a man who was finally able to publicly claim his own truth. The story of Jim Nabors is a powerful reminder of the gap that often exists between a public persona and a private life. To the world, he was Gomer Pyle, a symbol of uncomplicated joy. But in his own life, he dealt with incredible complexity and fear. The vicious rumor about Rock Hudson highlighted the intolerance of his time, but the real story that defined him was his quiet, unwavering, 38-year love for Stan Cadwallader. It was a love that outlasted the gossip, a partnership that gave him a lifetime of peace, and in the end, a love he was able to share with the world on his own terms. What did you think of Jim's incredible story? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this look into a hidden piece of